My wife let her boss sleep with her on New Year's Eve, while I was tied and freezing outside, then cried when I had him branded a traitor and sent to prison for 20 years. I'm a mafia. Next month will be the 8th anniversary of Vicente's wedding in Catania, Italy, a town just outside of Sicily. Vicente was a man and part of the Marconi family. I attended the wedding out of respect for my cousin Johnny, who is now the head of the Marconi family in Chicago. The wedding was what you would expect. A large Italian reception with tons of food, wine, drinks, and dancing until the early hours of the morning. Laughter, fights, dancing, more laughter, and many drinks flowed throughout the night. I took an interest in one of the waitresses at the wedding, a young woman named Ellis Fellini. She came from a small, poor family that had worked for the Marconi family for many years and was present at many of their special occasions. They served at weddings, cleaned houses, and did odd jobs when necessary. The Marconi family was generous, highly respected, and feared among the locals and towns in the area. Watching the girl throughout the night, I found her to be exactly the type of woman I was looking for, a pretty, innocent young woman who knew her place and would be happy to escape her current hard life. During the following week, I courted the young woman with her family's blessing. They were thrilled with the possibility of their daughter improving her station and leaving the poor lifestyle she was trapped in. I had to fly back to Chicago to attend to business, but I decided to return a month later to see Ellis after talking to Johnny about my plans. After Johnny gave his blessing, I flew back to Sicily and met with the Fellini family. I asked for Ellis's hand from her father, and they gladly accepted. I was generous and told the family I would support them and replace the money Ellis earned with a monthly deposit as a sign of respect for her family and for their daughter's hand. It was a custom to take care of the family, which was not a financial burden for me. We had a small wedding and her younger sister, Lucia, was her maid of honor. Lucia was only 16 years old and was even more beautiful than her precious sister, Ellis. It was a wonderful wedding, and 2 days later, Ellis took her first plane, traveling first class to her new home in the United States. The 7,500 square foot house by the lake was very different from the 800 square foot house where she and her family had lived for so many years. Ellis could not get used to all the luxurious surroundings and servants who took care of the house. It took time and help from me and my family for her to understand her place and that living like this was normal for our family. Excited and nervous, Ellis found the following year to be a whirlwind of changes. She had to improve her English, learn new customs, and accept that she was no longer a lower-class servant but the wife of Antonio Marconi. Her cousins and extended family helped her adapt to the American lifestyle, and, in no time, she was completely immersed in shopping, salon visits, and planning dinners with the help of the servants. Ellis was happier than ever. I could not have been more pleased, as she was everything I had hoped for in a wife. True to my word, I took care of her family in Italy, visiting them twice a year with Ellis. Over the next 5 years, Ellis embraced her new life, enjoying visits to the country club, tennis lessons, spa treatments, and all the benefits of the good life. Her family in Italy also prospered thanks to my generosity and were able to move into a larger house with more luxuries than they had ever dreamed of, thanks to their daughter marrying into the Marconi family. 5 years later, 5 wonderful years later, our life together was happy and fulfilling. Now we were trying to have children and start a family. One day, at the country club, Ellis was with a friend who introduced her to Gunter. Captivated by her beauty and accent, he offered her a job at his company, explaining that they needed a translator for some of their clients and that her presence would add a touch of beauty to the office. Flattered, she initially refused his offer, as she was not looking for a job, but she was intrigued by the possibility of using her Italian translation skills and doing something more than just shopping and visiting spas. It would only be a few hours a week, which would allow her to prove her worth to me and show everyone that she was more than just a spoiled wife. Ellis begged me to let her work and contribute to our family, as she felt guilty for taking without giving anything in return. I explained that in my family, it was the man's role to provide and that wives did not work. However, after many discussions and arguments, I reluctantly agreed, telling her she could work as long as nothing changed between us. I made it clear that if I noticed any trouble, she would have to quit. Ellis was excited to be able to contribute and be productive again. Although she enjoyed the diva lifestyle, She missed the sense of purpose that came with serving and contributing. This opportunity allowed her to prove her worth to me and become an even better wife. She quickly became deeply involved in her work and was anxious to impress me with a promotion that Gunter had promised her. Achieving it would show her generous husband how grateful she was to be my wife. Over the next few months, Ellis worked hard to ensure that I was happy and that her work did not interfere with our home life. She strived to meet my needs and make sure I knew how much she appreciated my efforts. Unfortunately, she made a mistake one night when she told me that Gunter wanted to have a business meeting after work. One day, innocently, without thinking that there was any alternative implication, she started a conversation with me. "Honey, Gunter wants to have a business dinner after work this week to talk about my job and a possible promotion. I know you do not like me working, but you know how much I like it and how proud it makes me feel. He wants to take you to dinner, just the two of us." That was the first time I had a suspicion that there might be problems, and I decided to do a little research on Mr. Gunter. "Yes," she said. "He is very busy at work and needs some time alone with me to talk about my performance." Smiling and staying calm, I replied, "Honey, you are not going to dinner with him alone. End of story. If he wants to discuss your work, he can do it at the office. If he has a problem with that, tell him to call me. I do not want to hear about this again, understand?" That was the last time she mentioned it, and life went on without any more questions about private meetings with her boss. I investigated Gunter and did not like what I discovered, so I decided to be more attentive to the situation. I planned to talk to Gunter at the upcoming New Year's party and make it clear that I did not approve of private meetings with my wife after work hours. My nightmare. The party was a week away, and I was already tired of hearing how wonderful her boss was and how excited Ellis was to go to the New Year's party at his house. All the girls told her how incredible those parties were, and she wanted to have a good time. She bought a sexy and elegant dress, had treatments at the salon, and looked like a movie star. When I entered her dressing room, I was struck by her beauty. I gave her a passionate kiss and said, "I love you, Mrs. Marconi." She returned the kiss and laughed at my compliment. "You look very handsome in that tuxedo, Mr. Marconi. And I love you too." I arranged for a limousine to go to the party, as I did not want to drink and drive on that cold Chicago night. There were record winds and low temperatures, and I did not want to deal with any car problems that night. I knew everything about Gunter before arriving at the party. A background check revealed that he had been in the military and employed by a shadowy division of Blackwater, known for hiring mercenaries in its line of work. All the information pointed to Gunter being a bad man who did bad things for the government and not someone to be taken lightly. I had a bad feeling about this guy and decided to pay close attention that night. At the party, Ellis enthusiastically introduced me to her husband. Gunter had an imposing figure, almost 6 feet 7 inches tall and weighing 280 pounds. I was almost 8 inches shorter. I felt dwarfed as I shook Gunter's enormous hand, instantly recognizing that he was more than just a potential rival. My intuition sharpened as I recalled some conversations in recent months in which Ellis mentioned private lunches with her boss, until I made it clear that had to stop. She said it had stopped, but I could only hope she was telling the truth. Gunter had a large estate on several acres of land, with more than 15 rooms and all the amenities that came with his position. It was known that Blackwater conducted shady operations in which drugs and money always seemed to be involved. I could smell the drug money emanating from that place. I noticed 6 other Blackwater guys, easily recognizable by their size, scars, and tattoos. They all had female companions, but their actions and the way they watched the boss and the crowd clearly showed that they were there to protect Gunter and monitor the party. Everyone was having a good time. As midnight approached, I remember the events of that night. It has been 4 months since the incident at Gunter's New Year's party. It all started when I left Ellis with her co-worker, Jane, to go to the men's room. A few minutes later, when I returned, Ellis was nowhere to be found. So I looked around to see where she might have gone. I thought maybe she and Janet had gone to the ladies' room. I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye, and that is when I felt my blood run cold. Standing there, stunned, I saw her going up the stairs hand in hand with Gunter. When I called her, she just turned, gave me a big smile, and said, "I love you." Suddenly, I realized that her co-workers saw what happened and gave me a look of sympathetic pity. I was about to run after her when Aldo and Bruno, 2 of his thugs, grabbed me by the arms and told me to calm down and let it go. They said their boss, the host of the party, had given them strict instructions not to interrupt them. Antonio, your wife knew about tonight and agreed to this before the party started. This is just a once-a-year thing the boss does with one of the wives. He is just going to take her to bed when the ball drops, so he will always remember him and this night, every year, for the rest of his life. It is like his tradition, and the boss always gets what he wants. Look, just try to relax. She will be back before you know it. Then she will be yours again, but for the rest of this year, she belongs to him. He has worked hard and deserves this once, so just let it go. Do not fight it, and do not think about doing anything heroic. Believe me, it will not go well for you. Just sit back and enjoy the food and drinks until she comes down. Then you can take her home and claim what is yours. I was in shock, and apparently he thought his motivational speech was working, because when they felt me relax, they let go of their grip. Without a second's hesitation, I quickly threw a brutal punch to Aldo's throat, leaving him breathless on the floor. That was my last memory until I regained consciousness tied with zip ties to a column on the patio. Apparently, the other guy, Bruno, knocked me out after I incapacitated Aldo. Later, I learned that Bruno took me outside so as not to interrupt the party. He left me there, unconscious and tied to the patio column while he went back to attend to Aldo. Bruno thought my wife would come looking for me when she was done having relations with the boss and left me alone on the cold Chicago night. When I regained consciousness, I felt the pain in my face and the cold in my body. I was not sure what hurt more, the cold or my head. My whole body was shaking as I tried to deal with the wind and the near-freezing temperature. Later, I learned that with the wind chill, I was exposed to temperatures of -15 degrees for more than 30 minutes. Bleeding and dizzy from the blows. I had trouble understanding the pain until I looked up and realized I was tied right below the bedroom where my wife was being taken by her boss. Not only did I have to endure the pain of the blow, the freezing cold, but also being so close to my wife, helpless and in agonizing pain. I remember praying for the good Lord to take me when I heard everyone cheering as they welcomed the new year. It was a great party and celebration for everyone but me. As I struggled to stay conscious, realizing that at that very moment, Gunter was with my soon-to-be ex-wife, the woman I loved and cherished. From now on, every New Year's Eve, and for the rest of my life, I would remember this humiliation, pain, and betrayal. After what seemed like an eternity, I realized my core body temperature was dropping. I knew I was in trouble. When no one heard me screaming for help, I grew up in a cold climate my whole life, and I knew well what hypothermia was and what to expect. The anguish I felt from my wife's humiliation, along with the pain in my stomach and heart, was overwhelming. While everyone enjoyed the New Year's festivities, I remained tied up outside and forgotten, alone and freezing. I could only look up at her bedroom and know that my wife was with Gunter as they welcomed the new year. After several more minutes of feeling sorry for myself, the pain subsided and I realized my body was shutting down. The cold was doing its job, and if I did not get back inside soon, I might not recover. A few minutes later, I closed my eyes and sank into a welcome darkness, as all my pain and anguish finally disappeared. I was grateful for the darkness as the humiliation and anger left my body. The next thing I remember is lying on a warm rug, covered with blankets, with my loving and treacherous wife leaning over me. I heard her calling my name and rubbing my frozen body, as if I were trapped in a horrible nightmare from which I could not escape. She was screaming, "Antonio, are you okay, honey? Wake up. Someone, we need more blankets." I felt kisses on my face and heard a sweet voice. "I am so sorry. They left you outside. They were supposed to take care of you. I am so sorry. Please, forgive me. I love you, honey." Her words sounded like something from a distant memory of someone I used to love and cherish. Now those words sounded false and empty, and I wanted them to stop. I wanted to go back to the darkness and escape this tragic nightmare. Fortunately, I could not answer. All I could feel was my body shaking violently. Several minutes later, after hearing her pleas of "forgive me" and "I am sorry," an ambulance arrived and took me to the hospital. The last thing I remember was being medicated by an older nurse. I did not regain consciousness until the next day. It was 3 in the morning, and the night shift nurse came to my hospital bed when she saw I was waking up. Apparently, Ellis had not left my side and had been sleeping in the bed next to me the whole time. The older nurse spoke. "Welcome back, honey. Your poor wife has been worried and has not left your side. What the hell were you doing outside in this freezing weather? Do you have a death wish? You are a lucky man to have someone who loves you so much. You would be surprised what we see here. I remember thinking, yes, she loves me so much. I wanted to tell the nurse that she is the reason I am here, but I could not speak due to the pain in my lungs and my coughing fits. You have a lot to go through, so do not talk. Just relax and do not try to get up. We are here to help you, and the doctor will be here in a few minutes. It was then that I saw Ellis running to my bed when she heard the nurse speaking to me. Honey, are you okay? I have been so worried. I felt my anger begin to rise as I remembered the events that led to this moment. I wanted to get up and strangle this woman who had just destroyed my world and my happy life. It was then that the doctor arrived and told me I had frostbite and had lost the tips of 2 fingers, a cardiac arrhythmia, and pneumonia. And the good news was that I would make a full recovery. Good news? I was praying for death. I looked at Ellis, who could no longer hold my gaze. When the doctor saw how upset I was and how my blood pressure was rising, they decided to medicate me again. Soon, I was back in that welcome darkness, away from reality and my treacherous wife and my shattered life. The next day, my cousin, Johnny Marconi, came after hearing about my situation. Johnny was the head of the Chicago family, who ran several businesses in the city, some legitimate and others that are better left unmentioned. You can read more about Johnny in my 3-part story, Love, Sex, and Vengeance. Due to my lung problems, I had to speak in a low voice, almost a whisper, as I told Johnny the whole story. Johnny congratulated me for taking down one of the thugs. He smiled when I explained how my punch took down the big guy, and that Aldo was admitted to the same hospital due to the permanent damage I did to his trachea. That was the first time I had smiled since I went to the bathroom at the party, just before I saw Ellis go up the stairs hand in hand with Gunter. I know you, Antonio, and I am worried. What are you going to do? With my damaged lung capacity, I had to speak in whispers and I motioned for him to come closer. Divorce her and kill him. With a sad expression on his face, Don said, Antonio, let us think this through. I agree. This guy needs an attitude adjustment. Let me come up with something that can keep you out of jail and maybe give you the satisfaction you deserve. Calling him closer and with a shortness of breath, I told him, Johnny, I could have died last night. I had to watch him take her to his bed while I was tied up. To make it more painful, they placed me right outside his window, in the cold, knowing he was with her the whole time. The son of a bitch even did it on New Year's Eve to welcome the new year. Apparently, it is his way of letting husbands know who the better man is and leaving that lasting memory. Johnny, for the rest of my life, every New Year's Eve, what do you think will be on my mind? No, that son of a bitch has to die, and she needs to leave. Please, do not let my unfaithful wife into this room. I do not want to see her. Shortly after our conversation, Johnny ordered the nursing staff not to allow Ellis back into the room. Ellis cried, not understanding why I did that and why I was treating her this way. She begged Johnny to make me understand and to forgive her, but Johnny was firm and told her to wait until I was ready to see her. Apparently, she did not know what to do and decided to call her idiot boss, Gunter, to tell him that I had kicked her out of the hospital room and that I was going to divorce her. The predator actually came to see me later that day. The idiot apologized for how the men treated me, but not for being with my wife. If I could have moved, I would have ripped his throat out with my bare hands. Antonio, I know what they did to you was wrong, but you cannot divorce your wife over this. She did what I told her to do. It was not her fault. She really loves you and is devastated because you will not let her visit you. She was very upset when you mentioned divorce. I looked at him in disbelief as he continued. Now, I suggest you rest and clear your head. You are not going to divorce her, and you will forget this happened. She will get that promotion and will continue to be your happy and loving wife, who, believe me, I have no intention of being with again. It was just a one-time thing, something I do with all the women who work for me. And besides, she is not my type. Her breasts are too small for my taste. It is no big deal. Anyway, she had a fun night and a New Year's Eve to remember. If looks could kill, the one I was giving him would have exploded every cell in his body. He continued, Now, stop talking nonsense and be the better man. I already spoke with the hospital administration and my company will take care of your medical bills. I instructed my men not to hurt you, and they live by a code, and I have honor. I will take care of all your bills and the work hours you lost. Now, Ellis is right outside, and I am going to send her in. Be nice and forgive her. Remember, it was not her fault. As I said, I told her what she should do that night, and women always listen to me. She is your wife, and I hope you will be kind to her. What the hell? Who does this guy think he is? Did he expect me to be nice to my unfaithful future ex-wife? This guy is either very stupid or he is on drugs. Since I could not speak without running out of breath, I was forced to listen to him. But when he finished with his bullshit apology, I motioned for him to come closer and used all my energy as I spoke directly into his ear and said in a dark voice, "I am going to kill you." He stood up, shook his head, and gave me a sympathetic smile as he left the room. A minute later, Ellis entered with a happy expression on her face. I saw tears of joy as she approached me. "Honey, did he explain what happened? You know I am all yours and I would never do something like that to you. But this was just a one-time thing, and all the girls who work there end up doing it once and never again. You have to forgive me. They all said you would after I explained it to you." What the hell? I was looking at the woman I had married, but I did not recognize the entity that had taken over her body. She continued, "Love, I know you are upset, but it was nothing, really. I mean, I told you he wanted to see me, and I know how you felt about it. But he convinced me it would be okay and that you would understand after you knew he was giving me the promotion. You cannot divorce me. We are going to have babies, and we will be together forever." I did not say a word, not because I could not speak, but because I had no idea what to say to this alien being pretending to be my wife. Finally, I just said one word: divorce. As if she were programmed by a computer, she simply repeated, "No, you cannot do that. We love each other, and what happened was just a one-time thing. And he told me he explained it to you a few minutes ago, so you know there is nothing between us. Now, just relax and I will take you home when you are discharged, and I will make it up to you, I promise." It was still hard to breathe due to the pneumonia, but I looked at her again and simply repeated, "Divorce." She cried and ran out of the room, leaving me stunned by her actions. Had I accidentally entered the Twilight Zone when we went to the party? How could things have changed so quickly? Days later, while I was still in the hospital, Johnny and his wife, Grace, visited Ellis to see how she was doing and to hear her side of the story again. After the formalities and several cups of coffee, Johnny began the conversation. "Ellis, Antonio told me what happened that night, and I wanted to hear your side of the story one more time." She could not look Johnny in the eyes, and, with her head down, she said, "It was nothing, Johnny. I made a mistake and I listened to my boss and did something stupid." Ellis curled up in a fetal position on the sofa and began to sob, begging for forgiveness between tears. Grace, with patience, calmed her down for an hour and several cups of coffee before they said goodbye and left, deeply affected by the outcome of their meeting. 5 days later, Johnny decided to take matters into his own hands. As I mentioned before, the family had several businesses, some legitimate and others in a shadier area. One of those businesses was a tattoo parlor called the Inkpot, located in a dangerous part of the city. It was there that the limousine driver dropped off Gunter, barely conscious, an hour earlier. Johnny's limousine was parked outside Gunter's office, waiting for him to come out. At 6 in the evening, Gunter left the building and saw Grace, dressed in a very short miniskirt and a revealing top, holding an official sign with his name. Attracted by what he saw and curious, he approached Grace and asked her what was going on. Previously, Johnny had had his team investigate everything about Gunter's company and who his superiors were. Armed with that information, they set their plan in motion. While he feasted his eyes on Grace's cleavage, she explained that the boss had organized a dinner and that Mr. Walton was waiting for him in the limousine. "This way, please," she said, pointing to the open door. Without hesitation, Gunter headed to the waiting vehicle. The second the burly man entered the limousine, he was hit by 80,000 volts from the stun gun Mario was holding. Grace walked away, returned to her car, and waited at home to hear how things had turned out. When the big man woke up, he was not happy to see Johnny sitting across from him, holding a 9mm pistol with a silencer. "Calm down, and you will live. I dare you to give me a reason to kill you." "Who are you, and what is going on?" Gunter demanded. "My name is Johnny Marconi, and my cousin is Antonio. I think you know his wife, Ellis." "This cannot be happening." "It was nothing, man. I take all the wives who work for me to bed. It is what I do. It is no big deal. Why is that idiot so bent out of shape over this? I do not want his wife. She is not my type." She has no breasts, and she is definitely not good in bed. Johnny almost pulled the trigger. His anger was rising. This idiot really deserved to die, and he was considering a change of plans, until the limousine stopped at the back of the ink pot. The door opened, and, as the big man got out of the car, Mario was there to greet him with the stun gun once again, followed by an injection of 20 cubic centimeters of a special mixture of narcotics that would keep him unconscious long enough to complete the procedure. An hour later, Gunter woke up tied to a table, with his head and body immobilized, unable to move. He panicked as he tried to move and realized he was incapacitated. The girl wearing a mask told him, "Try not to move. We are almost done. If you move, it will not be good for you." Mario administered another smaller dose of the drug, which did its job and knocked him out again. Sylvia, the most talented artist on the team, was called for the job and was instructed to use bright red ink and a thick stroke to make the tattoo difficult to remove. For the next hour, Gunter remained unconscious, secured to the table while Sylvia performed her work. The word rat in 3-inch thick red letters was permanently tattooed on the man's forehead. When Sylvia finished, Gunter was placed in the limousine, where Mario beat him, leaving him with several broken facial bones. Then, they left his battered and bruised body 10 kilometers away, in a deserted area near the lake. A final request from me. The beating would take months to heal, but the tattoo would be a permanent reminder of his bad decision to mess with my wife. The rough landing from the vehicle and the cold air woke Gunter up, and, after walking barefoot in the cold for half an hour, he finally collapsed on the side of the road, where he was picked up by one of Chicago's finest. Fortunately, Officer Michael Torino had received a call from a relative to pick up the hobo, or Gunter might have ended up in the morgue. Officer Torino helped the barely conscious man into the patrol car. When the officer was looking for the man's identification, he found the 4-ounce bag of crack that Mario had placed before leaving him on the side of the road. The amount of drugs was enough to charge him with possession with intent to distribute. That started the investigation and the search warrants on Gunter's home and business. Gunter's life was about to change in a drastic way. While Gunter was getting his new tattoo, Johnny's team managed to plant a briefcase full of cash and crack in his house, and heroin in the Ferrari that Gunter had parked in his garage. When the police searched his house, the drug-sniffing dogs found the stash in a matter of minutes. Johnny's team also planted another amount in Bruno's SUV, which was then parked on the street after he returned to the house that night. The police found a suitcase with cash and more than 3 kilograms of crack. The big surprise was the discovery of the 4 kilograms of pure heroin in the front seat of his red Ferrari, now parked in Gunter's garage. The state of Illinois had a zero-tolerance law, and the red Ferrari, his pride and joy, and Bruno's $80,000 SUV became state property. When he heard the news that night, Gunter's anger surpassed all limits, and he swore revenge on Johnny and me. While the investigation continued, Gunter was handcuffed to the emergency room gurney while they worked on his recovery. Fortunately for him, he suffered no permanent medical damage. However, that tattoo will be part of his life for a long time, and his problems with the law were just beginning. Ellis was in shock when she learned that her boss had been attacked and could not believe that I could be involved. She reported the incident to the police, mentioning that I was in the process of divorcing her. This information led the police to initially suspect me. However, my alibi of being in the hospital at the time of the attack cleared me, and the authorities began to suspect that the cartel with which Gunter was dealing was responsible. A week after leaving the hospital, the divorce process was finalized and Ellis was notified at work. She collapsed in her chair, crying, while her friend Janet tried to comfort her. Gunter, noticing the commotion, entered her office. He was enraged to learn that I was going ahead with the divorce. Gunter decided to confront me, insisting that I put aside my ego and stop the divorce. Gunter thought angrily to himself, "How many times do I have to tell this idiot that I have no desire to keep his wife? She was terrible in bed and just lay there like a cold fish." Still crying, Ellis tried to call me, but I did not answer. In desperation, she went to Johnny, begging for his help. However, Johnny told her that he would respect my decision and that there was nothing he could do. Ellis was angry with herself for her naive belief that I would understand her actions. That night, everyone assured her that her husband would forgive her, and she had believed that everything would be fine. Now she was facing the painful reality of a divorce from the man she loved. I moved out temporarily, and Ellis found herself alone in the house we had just bought while we were planning a family. Now there would be no family, no home, no husband. She realized she was going to be alone and needed to tell me that she had misinterpreted the situation and that she was sorry before the divorce was final. It was almost 8 weeks before I agreed to speak with her at the lawyer's office. She looked different. She seemed to have gained some weight, and her breasts were now larger than before. I sat across from my tearful wife and asked her to say what she had to say. Antonio, I love you and I am sorry. Gunter said you would understand, especially when I told you about the promotion. I never thought you would react this way, and I am sorry. Can you not forgive me? I never felt anything for him, I swear. I have only loved you, and I did this for us. Honey, please, stop this divorce. I need you, and I do not want to be with anyone else. Do you not understand? I looked her in the eyes for the first time, and she saw my anger and pain as I spoke. Let's see if I understand. For weeks before the party, you told me your boss wanted to take you to dinner, and I said no, that I was not going to let my wife be alone with another man. And you said you understood. She lowered her head as I continued. For weeks later, you are holding his hand as he takes you to his bedroom, while I am forced to watch the woman I loved give herself to another man. And even worse, everyone there knew exactly that he was making you his, marking his territory, letting me know that he was the better man and that you belonged to him. Ellis cried as I continued. Then they forced me out into the cold, where I suffer from hypothermia, frostbite, heart problems, pneumonia, while my wife is being abused 30 feet from where I was tied up. And it gets even worse. After 10 days in the hospital, the police accused me of assault for something that happened to my wife's lover. Now you are there, looking pregnant, which I assume is his baby, and you want me to stop the divorce. Are you out of your mind? Do you think I would take you back or even touch you again? You disgust me, and now I shudder to be in the same room as you. Sobbing, she pleaded, but I never felt anything for him. It was something I did only after he told me you would understand, because you knew how much I wanted that promotion. As much as I tried, I could not contain my anger. You knew I did not want you to work in the first place. We did not need the money, but I let you have your way. So, tell me, were you thinking of me while he was abusing you on New Year's Eve? New Year's Eve? For the rest of my miserable life, every year, every New Year's Eve, I will remember your betrayal and what they did to me that night. Do you have any idea how much that hurts or how it will affect me for the rest of my life? You remember a great night with your lover. I relive being beaten, betrayed, and left for dead on the cold Chicago night. It is over, and you can rot in hell, if you like. I suggest you get an abortion before it is too late. I felt bad after saying that, realizing that her religious beliefs would forbid an abortion, but she created this mess, and now she will have to live with the consequences of her actions. Her tears fell from her face as my words hit her like a hammer on the head, and she said in an angry voice, I am not pregnant. She was certainly pregnant, and the test proved that I was not the father. The idiot was now serving a 20-year sentence and would not be able to see his son or support my ex-wife. After several meetings with Johnny, we decided it was best to send Ellis back to Sicily with her family. She protested when they told her fate, but they explained that if she resisted, her entire family back home would be murdered in the worst possible way and the family name would be ruined for centuries. Their message was clear: never mess with the family. As payment from the family for her bad deed, her younger sister, Lucia, was sent to the United States to take Ellis's place as my wife. I found the younger version of Ellis to be sexier, strong-willed, and a great lover. Ellis returned to her small family home to raise Gunter's son on her own, as she was rejected by family and friends. Without support, she soon had to find work as a servant and take any other job she could find. The townspeople turned their backs on her, and many were afraid to befriend her for fear of showing disrespect to the Marconi family. The luxurious life she once led was gone, replaced by a hell without escape, raising a bastard son whose father would never see the light of day outside of a cell. She lost everything she loved, including me, and cried every night knowing that her sister was now with the man she loved and would never see again. Lucia, on the other hand, was fierce and had a fiery temper, refusing to accept any nonsense from me. Our relationship was characterized by massive fights, broken plates, and even police intervention, but it always ended with a passionate and loving relationship. The quiet and discreet woman I had known had been replaced by a fiery partner whom I loved even more. Our love life was exciting, and we both fell deeply in love. We fought like cats and dogs over the years, but we raised a large family together. Lucia was faithful and warned me that she would cut off my testicles while I slept if I ever cheated on her. I respected her and knew I had found my equal. The judge presiding over Gunter's case was a friend of the family. He received the order that Gunter pay for his sins and that the maximum punishment be applied. True to his word, the judge not only confiscated Gunter's Ferrari, but also allowed the state to take possession of his multi-million-dollar home and all of his financial accounts, which the court determined were clearly used for drug trafficking. There was even talk of adding murder charges to the 20-year sentence due to some recent fentanyl deaths that they were trying to attribute to Gunter. Gunter's company took a step back when they learned who the players were in Gunter's little drama, dropping him like a stone and leaving him hanging in the wind. The man with the big ego no longer had that arrogant smile that characterized him. The rat tattoo received a lot of press and looks from the jury. In prison, the rat tattoo was a mark of betrayal, and his life inside would be horrible. Even big men are marked in prison, and Gunter was subjected to several stabbings and beatings from different groups over the years. 20 years in Menard is hard time. After the first year, Gunter lost several teeth, had brutal scars on his face, lost a testicle and a kidney, and walked with a permanent limp. No one trusted a traitor, and he lived a hellish life behind bars, alone and constantly waiting for another attack. A radical change from his rock star lifestyle. A year after his sentence, I paid a visit to the idiot in prison. His face contorted when he saw it was me, and if he could have freed himself, he would have killed me with his bare hands for what he did to him. They sat him at the table and chained his legs and hands as he sat across from him. Enraged, Gunter began, "You are an idiot. You have the nerve to come here? You did this to me. You planted those drugs and set me up. This is a trap. I am going to get you for this and make you pay." Ignoring his outburst, I spoke calmly. "Karma is a bitch. So, Gunter, tell me, are you happy with how your plan turned out? You know, the one about having relations with my wife and showing me you are the better man. How has that worked out for you? You know, you might be the stupidest person I have ever met for messing with the Marconi family." I gave him a mocking smile and said, "I can see you made some friends inside. How do they like your tattoo? You never thanked us for that, but it is okay. You are welcome." Letting out a laugh, I continued, "Gunter, we are going to make your life a living hell inside prison. We have many friends and some family there with you, and they swore to make you pay for what you did to me and for the disrespect you showed my family." Before getting up to leave, I added, "One more thing you should know. The mother of your son lives in misery, thousands of miles away. You will never see her or your bastard son again, and he will live a miserable life for the sins of the father. I want you to think about their suffering every day for your arrogance and your selfish actions. Oh, and watch your back. I was told you were about to become someone's bitch. All this for one night with my wife. Think about that every New Year's Eve for the rest of your miserable life." 6 months later, I was on the courthouse steps with my lawyer, bidding on Gunter's property and Ferrari, which the state had put up for auction. Knowing the right people in Chicago shows that there are ways to manipulate an auction, and that day I got my final revenge by winning the auction without competition for a few coins. And now I was the owner of Gunter's property and his pride and joy, the red Ferrari. The judge, the police officers involved, and the employees received a generous Christmas gift that year for their consideration towards the Marconi family. I quickly arranged for the local newspapers to publish a story with photos of me and Lucia in front of the Ferrari parked on the property. The article welcomed us as the new owners and included a brief history about the criminals who had previously owned the property. The story humiliated Gunter, portraying him as a fool and a low-life thug who profited from the drugs that ruined countless lives, not to mention his sexual adventures. Several copies of the article were sent to Gunter, knowing that this would drive him crazy now that I owned his property and his beloved Ferrari. Although one of the thugs from the party never fully recovered his voice, living with a damaged trachea for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Bruno was convicted of drug possession with intent to distribute due to the drugs found in his SUV. He received a 15-year sentence and suffered similar treatment to his boss during his imprisonment. I was left with some lung damage from the pneumonia I suffered at the party, and the two missing fingers reminded me daily of that nightmare on New Year's Eve. I wanted nothing to do with my ex-wife, Ellis, Lucia's sister, completely erasing her from my life. However, my indifference towards Ellis and her son infuriated Lucia, which led to constant conflicts. After enduring numerous fights and dodging thrown plates, I realized I had to act to end Lucia's fury. Finally, I called Johnny, and we decided to reconsider Ellis's situation. Lucia calmed down when I announced that Ellis would no longer be treated as a social outcast. We arranged for her to become a well-paid maid in one of the Marconi's houses, allowing her to earn enough to get her own place and raise her son in better conditions. It was a small gesture of mercy. For the rest of her life, New Year's Eve became a time of reflection and repentance for her actions, after having been manipulated by Gunter. After several months of reflection, I realized that Lucia cared for her family as much as I cared for mine. I also knew that if there were more reconciliation relationships from Lucia, I would suffer a massive heart attack. Lucia gave me a beautiful daughter whom we named after her mother, Isabella. Lucia, upon learning of the arrival of Isabella Lucia Marconi, Ellis fell into a debilitating depression, suffering unimaginable sadness for the loss of her husband, her happy life, and a father for her son. Her reputation and her illegitimate son drove away any suitors, leaving her future dark and lonely. When the whole story about Gunter came to light, 6 husbands of Ellis's friends filed for divorce. The aftermath of that single night was epic, affecting many lives and becoming a topic of conversation for years.